Wednesday, boys and girls. Today it is Wildcat Wednesday, April 22nd, and we are going to jump into our math lesson. So yesterday and the day before, we did a review of odd and even, which is a topic we learned way at the beginning of the year, and it's going to help us kind of jump into the topic of multiplication. So I'm going to read you the objective, and then you're going to repeat it back to me. Today's objective says, today we'll find the total number of objects in rectangular arrays by finding sums of equal groups. So your turn. And I'm going to break this into little chunks because it's kind of a really long one today. So today we'll find the total number of objects, your turn, in rectangular arrays by finding sums of equal groups. Great job. So what does that all mean? Well, first we need to go over a very important vocabulary word. So one of the words you heard in the objective is the word array. Can everybody please repeat array? Great job. It's almost like saying array of sunlight, but it's one word, array. Now, what is an array? Well, an array is an arrangement of objects in rows and columns. So remember that rows are horizontal. They go from left to right. And columns are vertical. So they go from top to bottom. So this is an example of an array. It has magnets organized very neatly into rows. 1, 2, 3, 4 rows to be exact, and also organized into columns from top to bottom. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay?
All right, so the directions at the top of the page say, create an array. Write a sum of equal groups. Then the specific directions are very long today, so I need to read them kind of in chunks. So I'm going to start right up at the top where it says create an array with 3 columns. Then it says place 4 manipulatives or objects in each column. Manipulatives are just things like this. Counters, we have counter teddy bears. At home you might have things that you can use around the house like beans or Lego pieces or erasers, or maybe you have some small toys that you think will work, and that is totally fine if that is helpful for you. I am actually just going to do it with a pencil because in your math journals today, that's what you are going to have to do. So I'll model it the way that you're supposed to do it. So I'm going to start again just by rereading. Create an array with 3 columns. So I'm going to have 3 columns, and it says place 4 manipulatives or objects into each column. So I know that I'm going to have 3 columns, and I choose a shape for my object. Doesn't matter what. I chose a star. I could have chosen a heart, a triangle, a circle. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that I follow these specific directions because it says to create an array with 3 columns. So I just start my columns by placing 1 object at the top of each. And remember that columns go from top to bottom. They're vertical. So now I'm going to stretch out those columns by adding more objects to them. Now I need to have 4 altogether in each column. So I'm going to add stars until I have 4 total in each column. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to do the same thing for column 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to do the same exact thing for this last column, column 3. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now you can see that I have 1, 2, 3 columns, and I actually also created rows when I created those columns. So now I have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, and 4 rows. So that means that I can actually come up with 2 different equations. I can come up with a column equation, or an equation to describe my columns, and I can also come up with a row equation, an equation to describe my rows, which is what I'm going to do in the next part. So I'm going to slide this up so you can see more clearly what it says. The directions here say, write an addition equation to show the sum of the number of objects in each column. So it says column plus column plus column equals the total. So each of these lines, connected by the plus signs, represents the number of objects in each column. The line after the equal sign, of course, is the total. So the total number of stars that I have in this array. So I'm going to slide my book back down, and I'm just going to count. How many objects do I have in each column? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I write the number 4 in the first line. In the second column, I also have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the third column, I also have 4 stars. 1, 2, 3, 4. Altogether, I have 4, 8, 12 stars. If I can't skip count by 4s, I can just count on. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Or I could count by 1s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Lots of different ways to count up to find the total. So remember, this is my column equation. I just counted how many objects I have in each column. And there were 3 columns, so I have 3 addends, and then the total. Next, I'm going to write an equation to explain my rows. So it says, write an addition equation to show the sum of the number of objects in each row. Now, in my array, I actually have 4 rows. So I have the first row, the second row, the third row, and the fourth row, all connected in my equation by plus signs. And then after the equal sign, there is a line, and that line is for the sum. So I'm going to slide my book back down so you can see my array. So I have 4 rows. Row 1, row 2, row 3, and row 4. In each row, I just count how many stars I have. So starting at the top with row 1, I have 1, 2, 3. Okay, I can label that here. In row 2, I have 1, 2, 3. I'm noticing a pattern, but I'm just going to double check. In row 3, I have 1, 2, 3 stars. And in my last row, I have 1, 2, 3 stars. So my addend is going to be 3 for each of my rows. So I come down and I write in the number 3. 3 to represent how many stars I have in each of my rows. And then I just need to add up all of these 3s to find the total. So I can add that in my head, 3, 6, 9, 12. Or I could break it into 2 groups. 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 plus 3 is 6. 6 plus 6 is 12. Or I can come up and count my stars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Or I could count my rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Lots of different ways to find the total there. But all of the ways lead to the number 12. So you can see down at the bottom my 2 equations. Remember, this is my column equation. This is my row equation. You'll see that the total doesn't change for either equation. They both add up to the number 12. That's because I didn't add any stars or take any stars away. So whether I organized them and then counted them by columns, top to bottom, or by rows, horizontally, left to right, it doesn't matter. The total is still going to be the same. There's still the same number of stars, no matter if I count by columns or by rows. I'm going to model one more problem for you today. Number 2 says, create an array with 5 columns. Place 3 manipulatives or objects in each column. So I'm going to start just by making my 5 columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I know that I need to have 3 objects all together in each column. So I'm going to go through each column and I'm going to count up to 3. And when I get to 3 hearts, I'm going to stop drawing. So 1, 2, 3. Remember, the first one that I draw counts as part of the 3 objects that I'm supposed to have in each column. I don't add 3 more. I add 3 all together. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now please notice that I did my very best to keep my columns very neat and tidy. I also did a really good job of keeping my rows very neat and tidy. That makes my job of counting up the total number of objects really easy, but also it helps me really stay focused when I'm creating my equations in the next step. So I'm going to slide my book down so that you can see a little bit more. The next part says write an addition equation to show the sum of the number of objects in each column. So again, I'm looking from top to bottom. How many objects are there in each of my columns all the way through my array? So in column 1, I have 1, 2, 3 hearts. In my second column, I have 1, 2, 3 hearts. In my next column, I have 1, 2, 3 hearts. And then in my last 2, I have 3 hearts in each of my columns. And then the last line is just for the sum or the total. So I have 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. Well, 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 plus 3 is 6. So I have 12. And then I can just count on. 13, 14, 15. So 15 hearts altogether. If I can't count up these numbers in my head, I can just come up to my array and count my number of hearts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. Now I'm going to slide my book down again. And this time it says, write an addition equation to show the sum of the number of objects in each row. So now I'm going to go from left to right because rows go from left to right. So I'm going to slide my book back up so we can see my array again. And I have 3 rows. 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going to count how many hearts I have in each of those rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what I'm seeing is just the add end, the total number of objects in each row, repeating itself. Okay? We call this repeated addition. So down here, I have 5 objects, 3 different times, because I have 3 rows in my array. And 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 5 more is 15. I could count by 5s, 5, 10, 15, and then write the total. Or if I have a hard time counting that up in my head, I can just look back up at my array and count the total number of objects. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so you're going to notice that I have two equations again. I have a column equation and I have a row equation. In your books today, the directions say create an array, write a sum of equal groups. Then this is actually number 1 of your structured guided practice page. So it says create an array with 4 columns, place 2 manipulatives or objects in each column. And then you only have one line with no addition signs, and then you have an equal sign, and you have a line for the total. So I'm just going to label this for you so that you can remember, okay? This last line is your total line, total. This is your sum or your total, so the total number of objects. And then in this particular case, it says create an array with 4 columns. So because you're making 4 columns, that means you're also going to have 4 addends. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on your line, I just make 4 spots because you're going to have 4 addends. And then I, of course, need to connect them with a plus sign to make an equation. Okay, so when you're working independently today, you might want to do this too. Just read the word problem and then figure out how many addends are you going to have, and then create that number of lines, 1 line for each addend, and then connect them with a plus sign. And then remember that the last line is just for the total. Okay, you don't have to do this if it isn't helpful for you. If you can just look at the blank line like this and know that you need to write the entire equation here, that's totally fine. But if it is helpful for you to separate it into smaller parts so that you know how many addends you're going to need to have, totally do that, okay?
All right, so now that I've done a couple of problems for you and you know what today's objective is, it's your turn to get started with your independent practice page. So you have 2 pages today, actually, and you're going to find both options for math today on Google Classroom as usual. So option 1 is to print off your worksheets and to do them by hand, and then option 2 is to follow the link to Seesaw to edit the templates on Seesaw. Whether you do option 1 or option 2, you also still have to follow the math presentation link to Seesaw to submit a math presentation to me. For your math presentation, as always, you're going to present problems 1 and 2 of your final check for understanding. Looking forward to seeing how you guys understood today's first day of multiplication. Good luck!